What's up YouTube? I'm Guy, and today on the channel we are going to be checking out a new watch that I've got. Truth be told, I've actually had this watch for about a month now, and I'm finally getting around to getting a video review done, put together, and uploaded on YouTube. People have asked me in the past if I was ever going to be reviewing this watch, and I have told you, yeah, I actually have one, or I'm planning on getting one depending on when they asked me, and yeah, I've just I don't know, been kind of lazy the last month and haven't gotten to it. So I apologize to anyone that's been waiting for this review. The watch, of course, that we're talking about is the Casio G-Shock GWM5610. Now, as you're probably aware, if you've been following my channel and my watch collecting habits, the Casio DW5600 is one of my all-time favorite watches. That is a pretty simple square style Casio G-Shock. Now, this new watch that I have, the GWM5610, aesthetically, stylistically, it is very similar to that watch. Really, it's just a little bit of a color variation that delineates it from really being different. And the text on the face of the watch it's a little different. But at a quick glance, you would barely know that they're not the same watch. The really appealing thing about it is a few features that it comes with that upgrades it significantly over that more inexpensive but still great DW5600. The features that we're talking about, of course, are tough solar, rechargeable solar power battery cell, and the multi-band atomic timekeeping functionality. Those were the two main reasons why I wanted to upgrade to this watch. Now the DW5600, the simple base model square Casio G-Shock, can be purchased anywhere from right around $40, maybe a little bit under. This particular version, the GWM5610, comes in at a price point closer to $100. I found it on sale for about $89 on Amazon.com. But you're probably going to pay somewhere between $85 and $110, depending on when you happen to find it online or, in a store. Msrp on this watch is about $140. So we're talking about a price difference of $40 to $90, roughly a $50 price point at a minimum. Are those extra features, in particular, the tough solar rechargeable solar-powered battery power cell and the multi-band atomic timekeeping, are those extra features worth it? Well, I'm going to jump over to the tabletop. I'm going to show you this new watch, the GW5610. I'm going to compare and contrast it a little bit to the DW5600, and then we're going to jump back over to this view, and I'm going to close out with my final thoughts. So let's hop over there and take a quick, close look at this watch. Alright guys, we're going to jump over here and take a nice close look at this Casio GWM5610. I'll give you guys all the basic specs and features real quick. I'll show you a few of those features. I'm not going to go over everything. It would probably make this video be well over a half an hour long. But suffice to say that, yeah, there's a lot of features in this guy. So, basic specs. For the dimensions of the case, height and width, we have 46.5 millimeters by 43 millimeters with a thickness of roughly 12.5 millimeters. I think I mentioned in the intro, but if I forgot, price point on this watch, MSRP $140. I found it on sale on Amazon.com for $89, but I've noticed the price fluctuates pretty readily. So one day, literally one day it might be 85, 89, the next day it might be 105, 110. So keep your eye out for sales. They come and go all the time. Now, the features on this watch, and I'm just going to read off a list here for you guys. It has the multi-band atomic timekeeping feature functionality. So of course, it will on a daily basis listen for a radio signal and sync up the clock to that radio signal source, keeping this watch accurate within a second per day or better if you live in an area that has a transmission for that multi-band atomic time signal. Most of the United States, Europe, places in Asia do have that service provided, or radio signal transmitted on a daily basis, multiple times a day. So for the majority of the people that are watching this video, odds are very good that you live in a locale that can handle that functionality. Now I have a problem with my watch and the multi-band atomic timekeeping syncing. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. This watch also has the tough solar solar powered battery charging power cell. I don't know how to describe that, but effectively what we have is a small solar panel around the outside of the face of the watch that charges up the battery. On a full charge, that power cell or battery will last for 10 months if it never receives another ounce of light. And down at the bottom of the face here, we can see low, medium, high, showing what your current charge level is at. In my case, of course, there's a little hash mark there above the H for high, so it is fully charged up. And again, if we put this like dial down, it would run for 10 months without another piece of light touching those solar panels. This watch is, of course, like I believe all of the square G-Shocks, 200 meters of water resistance. It does have a fully automatic electroluminescent backlight feature. Now, when they say fully automatic, what that means is you can set it so that when you tilt it on your wrist as if you are looking down at the watch, the light will automatically turn on. I never use that feature. I don't want to waste the battery. So I just push the light button whenever I want to light up the face of the dial to read the clock. But it is a fully automatic EL backlight if you want that. Now this has a number of modes. We have a world time mode, which potentially useful if you want to track multiple time zones. We have 4 alarms plus a snooze alarm. You can turn on an hourly signal so that on the hour the watch will chime every time a new hour passes. We do have a 1/100th of a second stopwatch as well as a countdown timer mode. This does have a fully programmed and automatic calendar programmed out to the year 2099, so you never have to mess with the day and date, and just will automatically detect or change, I guess not detect, but change the date as though it's programmed to a calendar, again out to the year 2099. The watch will display in 12 and 24-hour formats, of course. If you do not have a atomic time signal for it to sync to, the movement in this watch is accurate to plus or minus 15 seconds per month. But of course, if you're getting a sync on a regular basis, the watch is going to be, dead on accurate. Last but not least, there is a power save mode, so that if the watch is in a dark setting for, I don't believe I remember the exact period of time, maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's a half an hour, whatever it is, the screen will shut off, and then when it comes into a well-lit area, it will automatically turn on, or you can push any of the buttons to turn the screen back on. That will make your battery charge level last much, much longer. I do use the power save mode, and you can see up here on the face of the dial there's a little PS for power save mode. Now, as we'll talk about in the closing thoughts at the end of this video, but I'll touch on it here briefly, this watch does, again, sync with a multi-band atomic time source. And if we push the lower right button here, we can see the last time it got the time. In this case, 2:04 a.m. on March 3rd, it synced up. So we can see it's actually March 3rd at 3:31 a.m. So a little over an hour and a half or thereabouts ago, it got the time synced up. Now, for me, the problem, and we'll talk about this again in closing thoughts, is that it will not sync reliably when the watch is in my house, in particular when the watch is in my watch case in my house. Sometimes if I set it near a window, it will sync, sometimes it won't. If I set it on my patio or my porch outside, it will sync reliably every single day. It's kind of a problem for me. I don't want to have to go through the hassle of trying to get it to sync. I just want to put it in my watch box. I want it to sync up every day, and whenever I want to use this watch as a time reference to set another clock to it, I just wanted to know that it's synced up and working. But that's not working flawlessly for me. Again, I'll talk about that more in the closing thoughts, so stick around for that. Now, as far as, all of the features, the lower left button, if we push that, we will cycle through the modes. The main mode is the time and date display mode. Of course, you can see up at the top left there, we have the word received, abbreviated RCVD. That just indicates that it has received a multiband atomic time signal sometime in the last 24 hours. If your clock or watch didn't sync up in the last day, that wouldn't be there, and you could quickly look at it and know that, oh, my watch hasn't synced in some period of time. Then you can go ahead and push this lower right button and find out, well, when's the last time it did sync? Maybe that says like, February 28th or something. Go, oh, okay, well, it's been like 3 days since it's synced. That's what happens to me when I keep it in my watch box, by the way. So then we also have the day, Saturday, date, March 3rd, and the time 3:32 and 55 seconds in the AM. Yeah, I'm a night owl. I'm doing this late at night. So, it is what it is. Other than that, that's basically what you get on your main display mode. I did mention you have the power level indicator down here at the bottom left. Over here, if you're using the alarms, you'll see little indicators for the alarm, snooze, and signal. Those will light up. I'm not using any of the alarms, though. And that's pretty much it. Clicking on the lower left button cycles us through to the world time mode. You can slew through, I believe you push the adjust button first, and there we go, it's the bottom button. And you can slew through all of the different time zones. You can set your world time mode, to be whatever you want. Pretty straightforward, right? The next mode is the alarm mode, and again, there are 4 alarms, plus a single snooze alarm. I don't use the alarms at all. They're more or less useless for me, but if for some reason, maybe you needed to remind yourself to take a medication throughout the course of the day, or whatever, you can set up to 4 different alarms here. The next mode is the stopwatch mode, and we'll talk about this more in a second, and the final one is the countdown timer. Now, here is another problem for this watch. Stopwatch mode. I'm going to bring in my DW5600 side-by-side comparison. Let's get this over to the stopwatch mode. Do you notice a difference here when we're looking at the displays? And the top right on my older non-solar, non-atomic timekeeping DW5600, it shows the current time. So when you start the stopwatch, you also know what time it is. On the other hand, on the 5610, the GWM5610, up at the top right here, we have the number of hours the stopwatch has been running. This is kind of a big problem for me on this watch. I like to use my stopwatch and my countdown timer on my DW5600, which I've had for over a year now. And when I'm in this screen, I want to see at a glance what is the current time. Now, with the new watch, I can't do that. I have to exit this screen. I have to exit the stopwatch screen, go back to the main timekeeping screen if I want to know what time it is, and then scroll back through to this stopwatch screen. Honestly, that's a big problem for me. It's kind of a deal breaker, and one of the reasons why I'm considering returning this watch before my return window closes with Amazon. I do love the watch, don't get me wrong. I think it's fantastic. They're both fantastic watches. But when we're talking about, which one do I like better, considering I'm having problems with the multiband time syncing inside my house, I mean, again, outside it works perfectly. If it sits on my porch, outdoors, it syncs up reliably 100% of the time. But I want it to sync in my house, right? So between this little feature where I don't get to see what the current time is when I'm in the stopwatch mode, it is kind of a deal breaker for me. When you consider that it's more than double the money, ultimately, aesthetically it looks basically the same. It's difficult for me to justify keeping this new GWM5610. We'll talk about that more in the closing thoughts, though. I just wanted to point out that that is an annoyance for me. The fact that I don't get to see the current time while I'm in stopwatch mode. I'll go ahead and stop the stopwatch, reset it, and we'll go back to the main home screen. Now, when you're in the main home screen, there are some setting options. You hold in the adjust button, which is the top left button, for a minute. First thing, you can set you have to set your current time zone. As you can see, mine is set to the Miami. I could have set it to New York City, whatever, the Eastern time zone of the United States. Since I'm in Florida, I just set it to Miami. That kind of tells the watch how to listen for the radio signal when it is syncing. So if you were in Europe and you had it set to New York City, it wouldn't sync correctly because the signal, I think, is a different frequency, something to that effect. So the next setting, daylight savings time, you just hit the bottom left button to scroll through. You can set daylight savings time to automatic, on or off. Going right here, you can set to 12-hour or 24-hour display formats. Obviously, I'm not in the military, so I have no use for 24-hour. Here you can set the the time, hours, minutes, seconds. Set the year, set the day, and set the date. Power save mode, you can turn it on or off. I do run power save mode on, just to conserve battery when I'm not using the watch. It will dim the screen so that it doesn't chew up battery unnecessarily. And that's basically it. That's all of the settings for setting the watch up. Push the top left button again to get out of there. And basically that's it. The top right button is the light, which I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera here because it's so bright. But as you can see, push that button and it does light up. The electroluminescent light on these Casio G-Shocks is fantastic. It's kind of one of my favorite lume applications on a digital watch or an analog watch like, I don't know, the Timex Indiglo. Like, this is so much better than that. So yeah, I really like a lot of, really I like everything about this watch. I just wish that the time synced when it was in my house, and I wish that I could see the time when I'm in the stopwatch or the countdown timer. That's really the only negatives. Another interesting thing that is different about this GWM5610 versus the more affordable DW5600, the case backs are in fact different. See if we can look at them side by side here. So on the right we have my 5600. On the left we have the Atomic Solar GWM5610. I don't know if you can see really well, but on the 5600 on the right, it's just a very thin pressed metal case back. They're both screw in with 4 screws at the top right, bottom right, left, bottom left, and top left. Same kind of screw in functionality, but you can see that the case back on the Solar Atomic Timekeeping model, it's got a nicer, more, it's machined or milled out, thicker, more heavy-duty case back. I thought that was interesting that they're different, considering it's more or less the same watch. I'm not sure why they would decide to have a much more sturdy, robust case back on this watch, but they do, and I just thought I would give you guys a quick look at that and a comparison between the two. It's interesting. It's very, very thick material. The bracelet or strap, I guess technically it's not a bracelet. I can't tell any difference between this and the DW5600. I think they're identical. Same with the buckle. It's a, kind of low quality buckle, but I like the strap. I like the buckle. It's very comfortable to wear. I have no complaints whatsoever. Of course, it has the same polymer case that all of the square G-Shocks do. Maybe there's some higher end limited edition G-Shocks that have a different case material, and I know there are, for a fact, are some that have different strap options, but this is, pretty par for the course for this style of square G-Shock, and it's excellent. Another small difference, the adjust button on this one is not recessed, whereas on the older or more affordable 5600, you can see the adjust button is recessed into the polymer shroud of the case. I don't know if that picks up well on camera. It's interesting. This one, just a little bit of a difference there. The style of the face, it's more or less the same. I guess I'll show them side by side. The printing is a little bit different, obviously, but at a quick glance, the average person would not be able to tell that they're not the same watch. Maybe they'd pick up like, oh, the Solar Multiband time syncing one has a red line around it instead of the kind of white outline on the 5600. Maybe they would pick up on that, but for the most part, at a quick glance, they look like the same watch. So yeah, that's a quick review. Again, I didn't want to go over everything in crazy detail. It would take a long time, but my initial impressions, my quick overview of this watch. It is a great watch. I think it's fantastic. It's just as fantastic as the 5600. But at double the price, I need all of the features to work correctly for my specific situation. For a lot of people, for the majority of people, I'm sure that the time syncing would work perfectly for them. I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't care that they don't see the current time in the stopwatch mode. You know, that's an annoyance for me. But yeah, it's an outstanding watch. I do like it. It's just not perfect for me. So I'm probably going to return it, to be honest. We'll jump back over to the studio view. I'll give you my closing final thoughts on this watch and wrap up this review. Thanks, guys. So in closing, what do I think of the Casio GWM5610? And how does it compare vis-a-vis the Casio DW5600, which, as I've already mentioned, is a watch that I absolutely love? Well, first things first, aesthetically, stylistically, they're virtually identical. Yeah, if you scrutinize them closely, there's obviously some visual differences, some colorations on the face of the dial, the text on there, very, very, very minor differences. But at a quick glance, the average person probably wouldn't even notice that they weren't the same watch. So from that perspective, there's no reason to have one over the other, in my opinion. They look the same. Now, the main reason to get the GWM5610 over the DW5600 is for those extra features. Most notably for me, the two main features that I wanted out of this watch are the tough solar or solar rechargeable power cell or battery. I don't think technically it's called a battery, but basically the need to never have to change a battery. As long as it gets some sunlight, it'll stay charged up, and you know that power cell probably will last a decade or more. On a full charge, even if it doesn't get an ounce of light, it will stay charged for approximately 10 months, maybe a little bit longer. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to get this watch, so I didn't have to worry about and futz with battery changes every couple of years. That's great, and that works fine, and I'm happy with that in this watch. The other main reason that I wanted to get this watch was for the multi-band atomic time syncing, timekeeping feature functionality. That is to say that the watch gets a radio signal on a daily basis, syncs that up, and your clock is always 100% accurate. Therein lies the rub. For me, that functionality doesn't work reliably, and it's sort of a double-edged sword. It does work reliably if, for example, I set my watch out on the patio or porch, whatever you want to call it. If I set it outside, if I have it facing kind of north-ish, since I'm in, the southern United States, it'll work very reliably every evening at around midnight to 1 a.m. It will sync up and it will be perfectly accurate. The problem is if I bring the watch inside the house, in particular if I put it in my watch case for storage, it will never sync up and get the correct time. Well, that's what I wanted it for. I wanted to mainly have it sit in my watch case and be a time source so that I can set my other watches to whenever I want to kind of get rid of that hassle of having to pull out my cell phone or get on the computer and look up the atomic time if I'm setting a watch that happens to not be running anymore. Of course, we're talking about setting, an automatic or a mechanical watch that stops after a few days. So since that doesn't work reliably for me, if I want to store my watch in the house, and why wouldn't I want to keep it in the house, it pretty much defeats the purpose of me even having this watch. So yeah, I think I'm going to return it. I have a couple of days left in my return window through Amazon to send it back, and if I can't reliably get it to sync with the atomic clock on a daily basis, the usefulness of it over my DW5600 really then just boils down to the solar charging. And that's not the biggest, most important feature to me. It was nice as, an extra feature, but it's not the main reason that I wanted it. I don't think that it's enough of a reason for me to keep it. Now, yeah, it does have a few other features as well. It's got multiple alarms, but I'll be honest, I don't even use the alarm on my Casio G-Shocks. So while it does have 4 alarms plus a snooze versus just the 1 alarm on the DW5600, again, not a strong enough reason for me to want to keep it over the much more inexpensive G-Shock that I already have. It's got a world time mode, but I don't need world time mode at all. I have no interest in that. I don't travel. I don't really have people in other time zones around the world that I need to kind of track or anything like that. So, that's not a plus for me. Now, in regards to the stopwatch and the countdown timer, which I do use kind of regularly on my G-Shocks, that it doesn't show the current time as well as your stopwatch timer or countdown timer in the same screen is another really big negative. I like on my DW5600 that when I'm in the stopwatch, I can also at a glance, without having to change modes, see the current time. It's a shame that on the GWM5610 Tough Solar Atomic Timekeeping model, it hides the current time when you're in those modes, when you're in the stopwatch mode, when you're in the countdown timer mode. It's a big problem for me, actually. I use the stopwatch quite frequently, and I don't want to have to be flipping from mode to mode to mode, trying to determine what time is it, how much time has elapsed, back and forth, back and forth. That is super annoying. So yeah, it's a great watch, don't get me wrong. It's got a lot of really good features in it, features that if you could put to use would be certainly beneficial. But for me, it's just not right, unfortunately. So yeah, do I think it's a great watch? I do. I do think it's a great watch. It's just not a great watch for me. For you, it probably could be. Maybe it is. If you're a current owner, you know, you're probably going to argue with me, oh, it's an awesome watch. It's much better than the cheaper G-Shock, the cheaper square 5600. You know, I agree. It is. It is better for sure. It is a great watch. It's just not a great watch for me because of those aforementioned problems that I have with it. So yeah, that's basically my review. I mean, it gets 2 thumbs up with those little caveats, with those little exceptions. If it did nothing more than reliably sync the atomic time on a daily basis, I would definitely keep it, because that's the main reason I wanted it. And maybe it's just because I'm so far south in Florida from that signal. Maybe it's to do with how the building that I live in is constructed, that it's blocking the signal. You know, I don't exactly know what the problem is. And for you, that might not be an issue. You might be able to, you know, bury it under a rock and it still gets a signal. But yeah, for me, it just won't reliably sync when it's in my house, in particular when it's in my watch box, you know, storage box. If I just set it on my desk near a window, sometimes it does get a signal and sync up. Not every single day, but some days it does, some days it doesn't. But I could never get it to sync up when it was in my watch storage box, which is ultimately what I wanted for it, other than being able to pull it out and wear it, you know, on occasion when I needed to put on a really durable, tough G-Shock watch. So yeah, there you have it, guys. I love the watch. It just has a couple of little problems that preclude me from, you know, wanting to keep it, because it's more than double the money of the watch that I already have, which does everything I want anyway, with the exception of the things that, you know, we have already talked about. I hope you enjoyed this review, and yeah, if you want to do me a favor, go ahead and like this video, pound that like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Down in the description of this video is a list of ways you can help support the channel, not the least of which is joining my Patreon, shopping on Amazon through my affiliate links. I get small commissions, so if you're going to buy this watch or anything else on Amazon, click on that link, and you know, I get a small commission. It really helps me out, gets me extra funds so I can buy things to review on the channel, so I can buy things to do giveaways with. So yeah, shopping on Amazon, that's a huge way you can help me out. Anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I will get another review video out probably sometime next week, and until then, take care. Bye now.